So I had recorded and edited the video that you're about to watch, and as I was about to post it, I realized the first minute or so of it is actually missing, and I don't think I had recorded it properly. So I just wanted to give a bit of context to that first part of the video and what was missing, so that you can watch the rest of it and then see the remainder of the video. So I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who works at one of the big four banks in South Africa, and we're having a conversation, and he was talking about the difference between wealth creation and value creation. And we're just fixating, on how, I want to build wealth and all these things. And he made a powerful point, which I think is so significant, where he talked about the fact that we need to transition from wanting to merely be wealth creators as people to wanting to be value creators and to actually contribute something of value to the world. And he argues that that's actually something that's more significant and more fulfilling. The video continues from that point, but I hope you enjoy it and looking forward to hearing your thoughts. And, when we're talking, one of the things that we're saying is that, to create wealth, one of the ways to do that is to create multiple sources of income. And we're discussing, together, like, no, of course, creating multiple sources of income is how people multiply their opportunities to gain wealth and income and so on. And we're just discussing how hard and how difficult that is for people and so on, and, the importance of that. And there was something that he said which really struck me, because we're just discussing this idea of wealth and making money and all these things. And he's like, Simon, it's important that you must always remember that money is a secondary thing. Money is a consequence. It's a result of the primary thing. And that the focus must be on the primary thing. And he said the primary thing must be on giving value, And it struck me so hard because at the time I really started digging deep into this idea of value creation and being a value creator. And his point was that money is the consequence of having given value, right? Money is a reward for the exchange of value. So you gain value out of something and you express your gratitude for the value received by giving money. And he said the aim must always be to give value, because there's a point where money is never enough, where money never satisfies. And he made a point which struck me so deep, and I don't know if I'm able to even explain it to other people, but we both understood it. And his point was that we need to set goals that are so big that they last even throughout eternity. We need to set goals that are so big that they last throughout eternity. And what does that even mean? So there are goals that you set in life, which when you achieve them, you can achieve them in this lifetime and it's done, But there are goals which, even if you were in heaven and you lived forever, you can continue to maintain those goals. And when he shared me his, I can't remember, I can't say it specifically, but his was like something along the lines of to give the utmost quality service in the most excellent way using all of my talents, or something like that, right? To give the utmost quality service in the best way using all my talents. Now, if you think about that, that's something that is without end, right? In 20 years' time, he can still give the highest form of value, of service in the highest quality with the best of his talents and with the talents that he's gained over time, over the years, right? So that's a mission or an aim that is continuous and it lasts throughout life. There's one book I read, it's called Education. The book is called Education. And what the author makes the point, she says there in the book that the source and aim of true education is to equip us for service in this life and to empower us for the wider scope of higher service in the life to come. And the author is writing from the idea that, there is something called eternity on the other side of life, at the end of it all. And that even in eternity, should we make it there, that we'll have goals, that we'll continue to have wider service and higher scope now. That's the author's view, and some people might disagree with that. But the point she's making is that we need to set goals that outlive life, that even if you were to die and be resurrected, you can still continue with that goal. And it struck me so hard when we were speaking, because what you realize with that is that money is never enough. Money falls short of being a goal for eternity, because there's a point where money, you can achieve those goals and then it won't matter, right? But obviously, until one gets to that point, that'll always seem like it's a worthwhile goal. But the point he was making, and the point of the discussion, was him saying that, or the conclusion that we took away, was the fact that the higher goal, there must be a goal higher than the accumulation of money, and that money must just be a secondary thing. And when we reflected on it, when we both challenged ourselves to review what our goals are and review the scope of our goals within the picture of eternity, and say, are our goals really big enough? There's some people who set a goal to say that I want to reach the entire world with a message, say I want to tell every single person in the world the message that God has put in my heart. And that's just an example of a goal that is, you won't finish that goal, but it will continue pushing you because of its size and its scale and its importance. And when I sat down to review that for myself, the thing that felt most true and authentic to me was to create multiple sources of value in increasing measure on a consistent basis without overworking myself or dishonoring God. And I settled on that to say, and obviously these things we review them over time, but the thing that most fulfills me, the thing that calls to me the most, is to create multiple sources of value in increasing measure on a consistent basis without overworking myself. Now that has various ways in which it shows itself, right? Multiple sources of value can take on different forms. Content is a form of value. Writing books is a form of value. Creating products is a form of value. Creating a service is a form of value. Doing that in your work, writing, speaking, all of these things are tangible sources of value. And if the goal is to create multiple sources of value in increasing measure, it means that if I finished one thing, I know that I'm not done, right? There's on to the next one, because the aim is to constantly give value as long as God grants the opportunity to do so. And it's a mission that can drive one to more than just merely accumulation or just accomplishment, because you realize, okay, if I acquire this, or I accomplish this, or I build this, or I make this, then the aim is to just continually improve and make more and more and more. To give multiple sources of value in increasing measure on a consistent basis. Right now, I might share with you some couple of ways in which I'm doing that personally, but maybe it's important just to emphasize the point that there's value in giving value. There's fulfillment in giving value. And for me, that's a fixation of mine. And I try to convince others to see the value in themselves and give that value to the world, right? And that's a form of giving value. There's ways to do that. The ways in which I can say I have done that, created multiple sources of value, is in the books I've written, the content I try to send out, and so on, and various other things in the background which might not be obvious. But there are a couple of ways in which I'm trying to do that even now, and maybe I'm going to share just a little bit of what I'm working on. A couple of years back, I wrote a book called Communion with Christ, a handbook on how to abide in Him. Maybe I might share the link in the description. And after writing it, it was, I received so much positive feedback, sold quite a few copies, and I was still a student when I wrote it. Maybe I'll tell the story another time. And it's a handbook on how to abide in Him. It's that you take the experiences that you learned, you condense them in something that's tangible, and you give them to someone else. And that's a way of creating value, is that you learn or you experience something, you contain it in something that can be transferred or given to someone else, and then you give it to that person, right? In various things. And I realized after the feedback I received that people actually wanted more. I remember there's a brother of mine, we went on a hike, and he's like, I wish we could do this and this and this, just using the book as a launch pad. I remember I took a short survey, and a sister of mine, she was like, no, in as much as the book is almost 300 pages, about 200 and something pages, she's like, I wish it was longer, because there's so much more that, I want to extract from it. And you realize there that whatever value you can give, there's always room to give more value, right? And over the past almost a year or so, I've been building Communion with Christ into a ministry. And I'm really excited about how that's going and how that's going to continue to grow. But Communion with Christ, basically, it's a place where I'm going to create, or I am creating multiple sources of tangible value in the area of spiritual growth, in the area of walking with God and knowing Him better. So it's creating multiple sources of value in a specific domain. Another way in which I'm doing that is in trying to create something that me and a friend of mine are working on, in working with value creators and helping them multiply the value that they're giving, right? And I'm very excited about where that's going. And it's the idea that each of us as individuals have something valuable to give. We each have something tangible or valuable that someone else can benefit from, but we oftentimes don't know how to encapsulate that into a meaningful format for someone else to receive. And as a result of that, we don't get a chance to give as much value as we could, just because of the lack of know-how and how to take what you've learned, experienced, understood, are able to make, and to encapsulate that into something tangible for someone else to benefit from. And so the world suffers a loss. You suffer a loss because you're not able to, give the value that you're able to give, you, or can only give it in a limited scope. And as the world, we suffer a loss from the value you don't give, because we're not able to receive that value in a tangible form. So an example of this is that someone might have a thorough knowledge on an important area of life, whether it's health, whether it's relationships, whether it's career, whatever. And they might have a thorough knowledge of that, but they can only do it on a one-to-one person. But until they're able to encapsulate that knowledge in a format that is relevant to whatever message they have to give, and are able to distribute that to multiple people, that value will always be isolated to wherever they are, right? And so there's a lack of experiencing the full value of that person because of the fact that it's encapsulated in just them until they extract it and give it to multiple people. So we're working on something like that. We've got some very interesting people that we've lined up, some of which you might already know. Working with some very interesting people so far. I'm looking forward to how that's going. And also in my architecture work, So I trained, studied, and work as an architect, in the field of architecture. And on top of giving value in one's work, we can give value on a day-to-day basis in our work, right? Creating multiple sources of value, giving our best in deliverables, and so on and so on. Is to also realize that the education that you've experienced is more valuable than only the job that you would actually work, because of the fact that your job has very specific demands on your education, which might not cover all that you've learned. So let's say you learned 5 things in school. Your job might demand 3 or 4 things because of the specific tasks or end goal that your company or organization might have. But there's other aspects of it that are valuable both in your own life and even in other people's lives, whether it's in the area of educating them, whether it's in the people of showing them how to apply that. So a brother of mine, he studied marketing, and excellent, brother of mine, and maybe you might see him on my platform at some point. And he's got a way to apply marketing principles to your personal brand. So when you go, for example, you're campaigning for a job or for a post, you don't realize that that's actually marketing, right? And there are principles that you can apply to increase the perception of your value, right? So marketing is about displaying the value. And there are principles that are involved in marketing that can increase the perception of value in a product or in a person. And it goes into a long stint of how to actually go about doing that. And that's the idea, is that there are things about yourself which, when you integrate them into your professional and technical knowledge, you're able to apply them and synthesize them in a way that's valuable to someone. So much so that what you've learned in school can actually have such a greater impact than only your job, which is also important. Our careers, our works, our workplaces are important. It's very, very important to be faithful in our work. But anyway, the point is just that in my architecture work as well, the things I've learned and which I'm working on in creating multiple sources of value. Part of that includes written content, articles I've published and continue to publish. Something I'm working on called Value Architects, which you'll see in a couple of weeks. And the aim is to create multiple sources of value. And if the aim is to create multiple sources of value, then there's no end, right? And my appeal and challenge in saying all of this is to say that each of us have something valuable to give. Each of us have something valuable to give. I'm so convinced about that fact. Anyone who is anyone has something valuable that they can give to the world. If only they could see, first of all, that value, if only they can encapsulate that value and also find a way to deliver that value, right? And that's what we're working on with Value Creators Agency. But my challenge in all of us is this. Think about the value that you and I have to give. The things that you know how to do that no one else doesn't know how to do. The things that you've experienced that no one else has experienced. And more than that, the things about your personality and your temperament that no one else has. That's value, right? And to give that value. In the process of giving that value, you will realize there are ways in which you can best encapsulate that value so that it can be of greater benefit. I hope that makes sense. So in the process of giving value, you will receive insight on how to best encapsulate that value so that you can give more value. So for example, I used to go around place to place preaching, telling people about Jesus, sharing the gospel. And I remember people would come up to me and say, I appreciated the message. Can you please give me your notes? Can you please share your notes with me, your sermon notes? And that's because the person wanted to be able to take away the knowledge, even if I was not there, or the information, even if I was not there. And you realize that, okay, not only is it valuable when I share the message, but it's also valuable when I take the message and put it on paper or in writing so that the people who I'm with can be able to contain that and go away with it even when you're not there. So in the giving of the value, the world will give you feedback on how to best encapsulate that value so that you can give more value. And I hope that point is clear. And so that's how, material came out, and eventually a lot of that turned into a book and a couple of books. And that's the point. As you give value and as you continue to give value, you might say, I don't know how to encapsulate it. I don't know how to, contain the knowledge or the skills or whatever. But the point is just give it. Just share the value that you know. In whatever way you can, meditate on how to give the value, meditate on who it can be best valuable for. And in so doing, you will see insight on, okay, no, actually there's a better way of doing this so that it can actually, be beneficial for more people in this and this way. Creating multiple sources of value in increasing measure on a consistent basis without overworking ourselves, and in so doing glorifying God. I hope that makes sense. Just wanted to share those thoughts this morning.
and get your insight as well. I didn't go into much detail on some of the things I'm working on. The aim was just to get the point across that each of us has a value to give, and we can give more value when we find a way to contain and encapsulate that value for someone else. Wishing all the best and looking forward to hearing from you. See you guys next time. Much love.